It's like a nightmare.
An unsettling amount of fear for an Oklahoma family after an annual hunting trip turned into a trip of terror.
There's no trace of him.
4 rescue crews are searching for a man last seen hunting with a group in the Lyman Lake area of eastern Summit County.
The local story makes national headlines as the search for a missing West Virginia hunter in Utah has stretched into a 5th day.
Search for a Suffolk man who went missing on a hunting trip ended tragically when first responders found his body in the woods today.
There are innumerable cases of people who seemingly vanish out in the wilds of our world, and it sadly makes sense that some people should go missing here. There are places on Earth far from human civilization, with treacherous terrain, wild animals, and the propensity to confuse and bewilder those who find themselves unprepared or simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Yet, an alarming number of these disappearances leave behind mysterious clues and snatch away even those of us who are well versed in the outdoors and experienced at being within these unpredictable realms. Here we'll look at 5 of the more eerie disappearances of experienced hunters and the most seasoned survivalists who have gone out into the wilderness and simply never returned. Number 5, Alvi Web. 86-year-old Alvi Web disappeared on October 19, 2019, from San Juan National Forest in Colorado. Alvi was vacationing from Muldrow, Oklahoma, and was on an elk hunting excursion to the Colorado wilderness, the Divide Road Roaring Fork area of the San Juan National Forest. The unnamed trail that Alvi was on when he disappeared meets up with Roaring Fork Road, or Forest Road 435, after approximately 2 miles. The area is generally rugged, mountainous terrain. Alvi was in Colorado with his son, grandson, and others, and the group had been camping. They had been elk hunting in that same location for the last 5 years running and knew the area well. October 19th, the family took Alvi 100 yards down a trail where he was left alone to hunt, close to the camp, near a meadow where he had hunted the previous year. The group told him, "We'll pick you up at the bottom of the hill, on the road, around 10 o'clock. Alvi was wearing an orange stocking cap and an orange hunter's vest over a heavy camouflage jacket. He carried a few food bars and some water, but no overnight gear, as he was only supposed to spend a short time hunting that morning." After a few hours, the group arrived to pick him up at the meeting spot, but Alvi was nowhere to be found. There was simply no sign of him or any of his gear. The other hunters searched the immediate area but came up with nothing, so they contacted the authorities. It was approximately 4 p.m. when they reported him missing. An official search was launched around 5 p.m. Montezuma County Sheriff Steve Nolan, along with the county search and rescue team, deputies, canine search and rescue, and friends and family of Alvi, conducted an on-the-ground search of the area, but again, nothing was found. Sheriff Nolan said, "We looked all over and searched a large area 30 yards at a time, but there was no sign of him, no clues. We had people 30 feet apart, and that's mostly aspen meadows in that area. We cross-covered areas we had already been over. We should have found him, but there was no sign of him anywhere. It's frustrating. Nobody's finding anything." A Colorado National Guard Black Hawk helicopter, Flight for Life helicopter, and a Mesa Verde Civil Air Patrol plane also searched the heavily wooded area. Drones were sent up at night, equipped with infrared, but no heat signatures were detected. Alvi had a cell phone, but it was either turned off or its battery ran down on Friday, October 18th. The authorities had no luck finding a signal to track. On Monday, October 25, the area was being searched in a grid pattern. Around 9 or 9:30 a.m., someone thought they heard a muffled gunshot, but nothing came of it. The official search was called off, but Alvi's family and friends continued to search the area for some time afterwards, with no results. Alvi had some trouble walking, given his age, and wasn't expected to hike a long distance, so the authorities were puzzled when he couldn't be located after such an intense and extensive search. Friends and family members said he did not have any disabilities and that he was still very mentally alert. Sheriff Nolan said that he didn't believe Alvi would have walked very far. The altitude at that location is about 9,500 feet, and the sheriff said Alvi had only been in the area a couple of days before going off hunting, so he hadn't had time to acclimate to the thinner air. A strong winter storm moved into Colorado after Alvi's disappearance, resulting in a large temperature swing, dropping temperatures into the 20 degrees or lower Fahrenheit. Did Alvi walk further than he intended, despite the altitude and his age? Did he end up in an accident and succumb to the below freezing temperatures? Surely the large-scale search efforts would have uncovered something. Could a large predatory animal be to blame? No clues were found to that effect, so it's unlikely. The unknowns about Alvi's case are many, and it's as if he simply vanished. As of December 28, 2020, Alvi remains missing, and there have been no further updates. Number 4. Carl Crumrine. 69-year-old Carl Crumrine disappeared on October 14, 2019, when he was reported overdue from a group hunting trip in the Lyman Lake area of the Uinta-Wasatch National Forest in Utah. The other people in his hunting party said they last saw him around 5:30 a.m. that morning, and he was reported missing after he failed to return to camp that night. Local authorities began searching immediately thereafter and continued for days on end. Carl was 5 feet 10 inches tall with gray hair and blue eyes. He was wearing a camouflage shirt, pants, coat, hat, and backpack with an orange hunter's vest. Summit County Sheriff's Lieutenant Andrew Wright said, "We've covered a lot of terrain over the last 4 days. It's unfortunate. We haven't found any sign of him." The official search continued into that weekend, and a storm was expected to hit. Regardless, a volunteer search was organized by the Garrett Bardsley Foundation and was planned for Saturday morning. People called in from all around to ask how they could assist in the search for Carl. A combined total of over 2,500 hours was spent looking for Carl, but there were no discoveries. On October 5, 2020, nearly a year after Carl's disappearance, human remains, along with clothing, a survival pack, and a rifle, were found by a hunter in the Lyman Lake area of Summit County, Utah. Days after, the remains were confirmed to be those of Carl Crumrine by the state's medical examiner. In an interview with Fox 13, Carl's son, Paul, said, "I definitely feel like a great sense of closure now that we know what's happened. Just that not knowing for the last year has been really hard. I'd just like to thank everybody for their support over the last year. I have people praying for my family and they don't even know us, so that right there is also a nice support and a great feeling." The Summit County Sheriff's Office stated that Carl's remains were located within approximately a mile of where the group had been camping in October of 2019. The Sheriff's Office also said the area where his remains were found is a very dense wooded area with fallen timber. What does that mean for Carl's death? Was he unable to get out of such a densely wooded area because of his health issues? How did he manage to get himself to such a location? As of December 28, 2020, Carl's cause of death remains unknown, and there have been no further updates. Number 3. Jerry Lee McKeon. 48-year-old Jerry McKeon disappeared on September 21, 2002, after leaving his home on Old Malin Highway in Malin, Oregon. Jerry was last seen leaving his home between 4:30 and 5:30 a.m. He left in his brown and white 86 GMC pickup. Jerry had a distinctive camper shell on the truck that covered the length of the bed, as well as a Honda 185 XL motorcycle that attached beside the canopy. He used the motorbike to explore the thicker wilderness areas. He carried a bow and arrow, preferring that over the use of a firearm. Jerry was no stranger to the wilderness, and he was locally renowned as an avid outdoorsman. He grew crops on the family farm and shared the farmhouse with his parents, Clifford and Bertha McKeon. Jerry was single, independent, and came and went as he pleased. It wasn't unusual for Jerry to go hunting alone. He was right in his element. What happened on September 21 to make that hunting trip any different? Nearly 100 volunteers combed a portion of the Modoc National Forest when the sheriff's office saying no trace of the missing man, no clues whatsoever were found. The search included canine teams and a helicopter search by the California Highway Patrol. GPS devices were used to make sure no areas were missed within 8 to 10 square miles. 2 weeks after Jerry's disappearance, on October 8, 2002, his truck was located west of Medicine Lake Road in a heavily wooded area in Siskiyou County, California. This area lies in the shadow of Mount Shasta. There were some hunters purchasing a box of potatoes from a packing shed in the valley, and on the wall was a poster with information on Jerry's disappearance, including a picture of his GMC pickup. Later, when the hunters spotted Jerry's truck, they knew that it was the one from the missing poster. Jerry's friends and family went to the place where his truck was found. Jerry's mother, Bertha McKenzie, said, "It looked pretty much just like you'd think he'd leave it." She also said his disappearance was hard to believe and that they were doing all right, as good as can be expected, but there's a real puzzlement to it. Bertha also said she knew her son was in trouble as soon as she realized he was missing. He's a homebody, plus his dad's birthday was on Wednesday, and he definitely wouldn't have missed that. She believes something bad happened to her son. "I think he met up with foul play. We don't think he drove his pickup there. He would usually leave a note for them, but that day he didn't." The family put up 2,500 posters across the area, including information about a $20,000 reward, all within the first week of their son's disappearance. Nothing more was found, and no clues were turned in. Friend Terry Guthrie, who knew Jerry since he was 6 years old, said, "I hunted with him 18 years, and every time he left the pickup, he never locked it, and this time it was locked. It's just certain things like that started making me believe there was a possibility foul play was involved. We don't know whether Jerry went down there for a purpose, or that Jerry didn't even go down there, or someone was forcing him to go down there. There's no explanation for it. It's beyond strange that no sign of Jerry was found in the area his truck was parked in, his gear was never recovered, and there are just no signs of him at all. The heat in his truck was also found to be turned all the way up, which was uncharacteristic of him. Is there something other than the wilderness behind Jerry's disappearance? Perhaps another human?" As of December 28, 2020, Jerry remains missing, and there have been no further updates. Number 2, Tom Messic. 82-year-old Tom Messic Sr. disappeared on November 15, 2015, from the Lake George Wild Forest in Warren County, New York. Tom was out deer hunting that Sunday with a group of 6 others, consisting of his family and friends. The idea was for the older members to be watchers, where they would sit on a log or other comfortable place to watch for when the deer arrived. The younger members of the group would use the trail around Brant Lake to drive the deer towards Tom and the other watchers. Tom was 5 foot 10 inches tall and weighed approximately 160 pounds. He was wearing duck boots, camouflage pants and jacket, and he donned gloves and a black and red checkered hat that he had worn for decades. He carried a rifle and a walkie-talkie as well. The group set out on the hunt, and Tom walked into the woods south of Brant Lake around 10 a.m., presumably to his hunting post. But when the younger members of the group made it up the trail to where he was supposed to be, they couldn't find him. Tom was an experienced outdoorsman and had taught hunter and survival training for years. He had also served in the United States Army as a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne Division. He did have a history of heart problems, and he had lost an eye in an explosive device incident in his early 20s, so he had poor vision. He also had limited hearing, as well as 159 stitches in his hand. He'd also just gotten over a gnarly case of shingles and nearly decided not to go on the annual hunting trip. Tom and the other hunters planned to meet back up in a couple of hours after they began their hunt. When Tom did not show up and was nowhere to be found, his friends called in the forest rangers, and they searched starting from 4:30 p.m. It got dark around 7 p.m., and at that point, half the group stayed and fired their rifles and honked their car horns to get Tom's attention. The rest left the scene and reported him missing to family and the authorities. The next day, November 16, the search began with 13 trained search and rescue professionals from the Park Service. It was well organized and commenced quickly. This was the beginning of a search that lasted several weeks, involving more than 300 professionals and volunteers on some days. The searches were assisted by dogs, divers, and several helicopters, but there was no sign of Tom or his rifle. More than 4 square miles were covered, with a larger area being air searched with a helicopter provided by the State Police Aviation Unit. More than 15 agencies were involved in the search for Tom. Heavy rain was one issue the search efforts faced, but SAR dogs were sent out before the worst of it had arrived. Searchers combed through the woods, including swamps, and checked nearby roads, but there was absolutely nothing. The search area has many caves, crevices, and other hazards, but given his age, searchers were baffled as to how he would have gotten far from his original location. Tom had felt at home in the woods since he was a boy, and if he had gotten lost, his wife mentioned that he would have cut a piece of his jacket and tied it to a tree to signal his whereabouts and performed other basic survival tactics. It just doesn't make sense that he would disappear without a trace. On the fourth day of the search, November 19, the FBI showed up to the investigation. This was highly unusual. Investigators had said there were no indications of foul play, so why was the FBI getting involved? Nothing further was found by the officials. Tom's wife, Beverly, said, "The FBI told me something isn't right with his case, but they don't know what. They won't share any theories if they have them. The FBI said until they make a discovery, they're never going to know. The only thing I can think of is that maybe someone came by in a quad, heard him, got scared and drove him out of there. I keep praying they'll find him so we can have some closure. I keep worrying that I didn't tell him I loved him the last day I saw him alive." David Winchell, a spokesman for the DEC, said rangers would continue to search the area on a limited, continuous basis since the wide-scale ground search ended in January 2016. Rangers will continue to check the area routinely for any additional clues. Tom's disappearance is still classified as an active missing persons case by authorities and is still as unusual to this day. In the summer of 2018, state police used cadaver dogs to go through portions of the woods and fields near where Messic disappeared. State police investigator John Dyatt said no clues were found, but the investigation was ongoing. In the movie Missing 411: The Hunted, one of the group was interviewed and mentioned hearing a strange noise in the woods on the day that Tom went missing, like nothing he had ever heard before. The hunter said he reported this to the authorities on the day of, but they brushed it off as nothing. Could something non-human be lurking in the area? And that's what the noise was when he went missing? Tom was an older but experienced woodsman, known as a tough guy and not one to wander aimlessly into the woods while out on a hunt. He carried a rifle and a walkie-talkie, and no sign of either item has been found despite an extensive and detailed search of the area. What on earth, or beyond it, happened to Tom Messic? As of December 28, 2020, Tom remains missing, and there have been no further updates. Number 1. Aaron Hedges. 38-year-old Aaron Hedges disappeared on September 7, 2014, from Crazy Mountain in Montana. Aaron was elk hunting in the Crazy Mountain area of the northern Rocky Mountains with two of his friends, Greg Leitner and Joe Depew. The three hunters began their week-long trip at the Cottonwood Lake Trailhead on Thursday, September 3, 2014, around 20 miles north of the town of Billings, Montana. Aaron carried a bow and arrows, as well as a handgun stashed in his pack, while Greg and Joe carried rifles with them. They intended to base themselves around Campfire Lake. The group had 2 horses and a mule with them, but Aaron hiked in on foot. While they were on the wooded trail towards Campfire Lake, the mule in tow got spooked and started bucking, which threw their supplies and the kid off trail, including Aaron's sleeping bag. They continued on anyway. In the prior year, the group had camped nearby at a place called Sunlight Lake. There, they had hidden an emergency cache. On September 5th at 10 a.m., Aaron made the decision to hike towards Sunlight Lake to locate the cache and replace his lost sleeping bag. Greg and Joe urged Aaron to come back into camp instead of overnighting it at Sunlight Lake, as the area is isolated and dangerous, especially at night. Aaron assured his companions that he was only going to grab the supplies and return to camp the same evening. At 4 p.m., the group tried to contact Aaron on their Garmin walkie-talkie. The equipment showed their respective GPS positions. Aaron's location was on the very edge of the screen. He had missed the fork in the trail that leads to the lake. It was a clearly marked trail, so how did he manage to miss it? Aaron was instead walking northeast for some reason. Had he happened upon a hunting opportunity that was too good to pass up? Aaron's friends didn't know why he would head that direction, but he knew what he was doing in the woods, so they didn't think much of it at first. On September 6th, they realized Aaron was definitely missing when he failed to return to camp. They decided to look for him themselves for a while. They didn't find him, and a snowstorm came in on September 7th with 18 to 24 inches of new snow, and the temperatures fell dramatically from 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit to 10 to 15 degrees. While the hunters realized that Aaron was indeed missing on September 6th or 7th, he wasn't officially reported missing until his wife, Christine, notified the Sweetgrass County Sheriff's Office on September 8th after Greg and Joe had called her. The time between Aaron's disappearance and the time when authorities were informed is hazy. The two companions justified their decision by pointing out that they looked for Aaron themselves before they told anybody, and that he was, after all, an armed and experienced woodsman. Corporal Greg Todd, who headed up Park County Search and Rescue, was unable to draw any firm conclusions at the time. "I can't," he said. "It's the million-dollar mystery we have right now. We just have so many unanswered questions that it really just doesn't give us much of a direction. To me, that just seems too long to report somebody missing. I can understand if your buddy's missing, you can go out and look for him for a day, but after that, you need more help. I might have waited a day. He might have killed something and it might take some time to get back to camp, so I'll go look for him the next day, see if he needs help getting stuff out. If I can't find him by the end of the day, I'm getting the hell out of there and asking for help." However, I can't speculate or second guess, Sheriff Todd continues. "I've been doing search and rescue for a while now, and people react differently. In the situation at hand, I can't speculate on the thought process." By the time the official search had started, the snowstorm that had hit the area on September 7 hindered the efforts to find Aaron. The continuing storm made aircraft searching nearly impossible for the first couple of days. Horseback riders were initially sent out before other searchers. Search and rescue teams focused their efforts on the area that stretches from the Cottonwood Lake Trail to Trespass Creek. 20 K-9 units, 7 horse teams, 59 ground searchers, the National Guard, and private night vision-equipped helicopters with spotlights eventually joined the search. Wednesday, September 9, 2014, the second day of the official search, Aaron's boots were found way off to the east of Sunlight Lake, close to the creek and falls. They were intentionally placed side by side. Close by was a camelback water bladder. The tube connected to the bladder had been removed. Just off trail was a fire pit with a partially burned cigarette pack. A fire bundle and 2 waist belts from a backpack that had been removed from the pack were also located. Despite the extensive search efforts, nothing else was found. Search dogs in the area also didn't pick up Aaron's scent. Now, the strangest thing about these findings is that the searchers were in the area where the boots and other items were found just a day or two before, but nothing was located at that time. Was Aaron on the move during the search, making it even more difficult to locate him? Even if hypothermia had set in, causing him to remove clothing, he surely would have only made it a short distance without his boots in 2 feet of snow. Even with these findings, by September 22, 2014, officials scaled back the search, pending more information. It was the following summer, on June 22, 2015, around 9 months after the disappearance, when Roger Beslanowicz, a butcher from Powell, Wyoming, came across more of Aaron's belongings while visiting relatives at the Rain Anchor Ranch in Sweetgrass County, Montana. Roger was outdoors on the ranch on June 22nd, waiting while a relative of his fixed a fence. So with some time to kill, he made his way up to a ridge with a beautiful view of the surrounding area. After taking in the vista, Roger took a shortcut through a stand of timber on his way back. It was then that a flash of orange caught his eye. Upon further investigation, he found several items leaning against a tree. Roger's inventory of what was found at the scene included a bow, a backpack, socks, shirts, sweatpants, and an orange hunting vest. Roger spoke of his findings. "My first thought when I saw clothes piled up against a tree, I just knew there was going to be a body there. There's a lot of bear activity where they flip the rocks over to eat the bugs underneath. I just knew there was going to be a body there. But there wasn't. I thought some out-of-state hunter got cold and disoriented and wanted to go home, but he couldn't find his stuff, so I gathered it all up to put it in the backpack to haul it back out. When I was just about done, I saw a piece of paper, and it was part of his license, and it had his name on it. The backpack had holes in it, which Roger assumed were caused by small animals. Wrappers from granola bars, along with other debris, were scattered nearby. Aaron's handgun and driver's license were also discovered in the backpack. The gear was only a short distance from the main ranch house and safety. The area was searched, and located at the head of the ridge was a thermos cup and an open energy drink. Nothing else was found in June 2015. On August 8, 2016, near the Rain Anchor Ranch, some guests found a skull lying underneath a dead tree. Law enforcement was called in and shown the skeletal remains. They began a systematic search of the area where they uncovered less than 80% of Aaron's skeleton. Most of the remains were concentrated in a 20-yard area. Sweetgrass County Sheriff Dan Tronrud said, "It's still an ongoing investigation. Are we going to be able to tell what the man died from? Probably not. There's no bullet holes in the skull. There's nothing else that we can see. The forensic pathologist will look to see if there's knife wounds on the bones or hatchet marks, but I'm guessing it's going to go down as one of those mysteries." Investigators also found his Samsung cell phone nearby and were initially hopeful to recover data from it to gather further insight into his death, but it was found to be corroded beyond repair, having been exposed to the elements for nearly 2 years. It was given multiple chemical baths in an attempt to remove corrosion, but to no avail. Landowner Rebecca Rain described the location where the items were found as full of pine trees, broken down branches, and tall grasses. "It's pretty low where it was, actually," Rebecca said. "It wasn't too far off Rain Road. We just would have never guessed it was that close. He could see the house." Had Aaron removed layers of clothing along with his boots and headed in the wrong direction due to hypothermia? If so, how did he make it so far east of where they started? The distance he would have had to travel would be around 15 miles, much of it off trail and through rough terrain, including rocks and heavy foliage. That distance, covered without boots in fairly deep snow and sub-freezing temperatures, seems impossible. Aaron was also within sight of buildings and close to a road. "He was very close, but just didn't quite get there," said Sweetgrass County Undersheriff Alan Ronenberg. As of December 27, 2020, Aaron's exact cause of death remains unknown, and there have been no further updates. So, friends, what do you think about these cases? How did all these wilderness experienced people go missing, some with no clues ever to be uncovered at all? These mysterious disappearances are only 5 of a frightening number of missing person cases. If you have a case you would like to see featured, please email us at nationalparkmysteriesyt@gmail.com. Until we meet again, take care of yourselves and each other. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll talk to you next time.